Today, if you look at the India-US relationship, it's not a narrow relationship only devoted to each other's gains. Our relationship today impacts the rest of the world. The good part of the relationship is today that we understand that we have to make space for each other and that we can work with each other even if we do not entirely agree on every aspect of every issue. Today, if you look at the India-US relationship, it's not a narrow relationship only devoted to each other's gains. I think our relationship today impacts the rest of the world, definitely does the Indo-Pacific. There are a lot of countries who look to us individually or bilaterally for some part of the betterment which they hope for, and the solutions which the world is searching for in many respects. So that's the sort of broad sense which I want to give you. A bilateral, a very solid, positive, productive bilateral conversation, but framed in the context of larger global challenges where there's a high degree of convergence on how we look at those challenges. We may articulate it a little bit differently. It's natural, our positions will not be identical, our priorities may sometimes be a little bit different. But again, the good part of the relationship is today that we understand that we have to make space for each other and that we can work with each other even if we do not entirely agree on every aspect of every issue. So it was I would say, a very comfortable visit in that sense. I think we had some very good conversations.
Sriram, Hindu.
Two defense-related questions. In your meeting with Secretary Austin, there was some mention of a dialogue that's going to be launched later this year with artificial intelligence, cyber, and space. Can you tell us at this stage a little bit more about what we should expect? The second question is related to your UN visit last week. You were involved with a couple of France-related trilaterals, and one of them was between France and Australia and India. France was a little bit cheesed off with what was happening in the Indo-Pacific last year because of AUKUS. And I remember at the time there might have been some outreach between France and India. How would you characterize India's role in trying to, would it be fair to say India's playing a role in mediating the relationship of the French with Indo-Pacific countries, especially Australia?
On your first question, honestly, that's a technical dialogue between the Defense Department and the Ministry of Defense. So I really don't have the enough visibility or understanding of it to add further to your knowledge. On your second question, yes, obviously there were some issues between France and Australia last year, which is why the trilateral, which was at that time planned, did not take place. I think between them they seemed to have put that period behind them, and that's for them to do. I mean, I would not pretend to you that in any way we were involved. But we are very glad that two important partners for us are today have reaffirmed their ability to work together and work with us together. I think that's to our advantage. These trilaterals and more than trilaterals sometimes, these are very effective ways of today conducting international relations. They give you many more possibilities, and I think there was one with Australia, there was one with the UAE as well, where the French were concerned, and there was also a trilateral we did with Australia and Indonesia. So you will see this as a fairly regular way of conducting diplomacy. There's a lot of value. the agenda for this, for our cooperation, trilateral cooperation, I think we were able to come up with broad outlines. What are the overlapping interests? Where is it that our working together can help? Some of it was related to maritime security. Some of it dealt with climate challenges. So we did make good progress even in that first meeting of, not first meeting, but even on this meeting of that trilateral.
Prashant, Hindustan Times.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you, Foreign Minister. My question is this Prime Minister Modi's message to Russian President Putin that today is not an end of the war. Even though this was India's consistent stance, calling for dialogue and diplomacy to de-escalate tensions in Ukraine, his recent public and direct statement to President Putin made a huge impact. Since India is going to assume the presidency of G20 and the United Nations Security Council, how do you view the Russia-Ukraine issue moving forward, given Russia is central to both G20 and the UN Security Council? What challenges do you foresee?
Well, as I had explained in answer to an earlier question, it was a subject which was, an obvious subject to come up at the meeting. The position that the Prime Minister took was consistent with the position that we have been taking earlier. Now, possibly, it was received and perceived in a way because it was a face-to-face meeting, whereas earlier on, these were reports of conversations that had taken place. So, in terms of the impact that they made on the global media, I think it's understandable that a physical meeting made a stronger impact than a sort of a second-hand report in a way. In terms of the G20 and the UN Security Council, I think this issue will naturally continue to feature in all important international discussions. Where the G20 is concerned, our view is the G20 was primarily financial, economic, sometimes partly a social policy mechanism. That was the mandate or the remit of this organization. Given the fact that the world is today grappling with energy security, food security, fertilizers, debt, trade disruptions, these very critical pressing problems must be addressed by the body which has a history of 20 years doing this. So I think it's something which really needs to, we hope that will become the focus of what happens when the G20 meets. Obviously, I mean, Ukraine will have some impact on how this works, but at the moment the presidency is with Indonesia, and this, we have committed our fullest support to Indonesia to ensure a successful G20 presidency. On the Security Council, during our presidency, there will be two themes which will be important. One is on the reform of the United Nations, and you note there have been some developments in that regard, including an American position that has been articulated by President Biden and a Russian position articulated by Foreign Minister Lavrov. Our second theme will be pushing is counterterrorism. That's a widespread global concern today. It's an issue on which we also see a stronger consensus. So those will really be the focus of what we'll be doing.
So Yashwant and Seema have second questions.
Okay, we'll take that and then end with that.
Only
Then
four?
we'll open up a full round.
Thank you.
Okay, four now.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, and EM. Thank you so much for taking a second round. My first question is I have two parts to the question, two questions actually.
No, Yashwant, this is
On the question about the UNSC and upcoming Indian presidency in December, how serious are the Americans now? They have talked about UNSC reforms before, and they have agreed to our claim to a permanent seat. But how serious are they this time? Do you think they really want to push it, which could take it? I mean, the process hasn't moved an inch over the last since the IGN started. I mean, there is no text to discuss, nothing. So how serious are they this time, and do you hope to get the ball? And second is, after the passing of Queen Elizabeth, a lot of countries, members of the former colonial empire, are re-looking at their relationship. Like Australia wants to end the dominion status, etc., etc. Are we looking at our membership of the Commonwealth in that sense, or is that something that we don't? Thank you so much.